Yeah, I mean, but yeah, I think driving back then, because it was more about driving talent. Now it's about how smooth you can be, and it is more about the car because of how much training these drivers have had to go through. Like, I think this is an argument I have with a lot of people, especially on social media and in real life, because I used to do a motor sport technology course and university, and a lot of people are very much newer fans, and I have to explain to them that just because a driver raced in a previous era and maybe the field overall wasn't as good doesn't mean they weren't as good. The driver gaps were a lot bigger back in the day, but it doesn't mean that the top level wasn't just as good. It's like, for example, people saying, "Oh, Pele wasn't good because he did this or he did that," not
Yeah.
realizing that he was at the level in his he was at another level in his career, just like Messi and Ronaldo. I think it's the same with Jim Clark and Fangio compared to Hamilton and Verstappen and Schumacher.
Yeah, it's like when in football they say they would play against farmers. Yeah, well, they could have been a farmer as well. Just like in F1, you would just race against mechanics who knew how to drive. Well, that was that was the playing field. You can't change that.
Yeah,
I mean, I do think that I think the modern cars are a bit too autonomous. There needs to be more leeway for the drivers to do. I mean, I don't like the whole, the DRS and they have the overtake button where you get all the battery power. It's all a bit artificial. But it is funny how every driver is kind of stuck in their generation of this is how it should be done. Because when Tony Brooks a few years ago before he died appeared on Beyond the Grid, he basically said that for him the beginning of the end for F1 car design was when they moved the engine behind the driver. So literally the first fundamental change to design, and that is like, well, now they've ruined it because now you get so much less like feel for it, and it's the car and the balance is better. The car does half the work, and it's amazing that that alone is enough for him to think, oh well, the driver doesn't do enough.
Yeah, to quote Mazzaro exactly in that interview, he said he doesn't like Formula One nowadays, not because the drivers are not good enough, but because it has all become too easy. There are a lot of electronic parts of the car which make the driver's job easy. They don't struggle as we used to. Again, those drivers always talking about their period where they can't really adapt. And that's why you lose the good part of motorsport. Don't get me wrong, the best driver will still emerge, win, and make a difference. So that's just what you hear from all the 70s drivers. I feel like they try not to insult the drivers themselves because that would be going against the driver etiquette. Obviously, some of them still do, but most of them still try to at least respect that the modern drivers are still very good. But I think they've really gone beyond with the current cars and technology because, again, it's easy to see as those old 80-year-olds who are just annoyed at the young drivers having more facilities. But they would have to wrestle the car in a lot of cases. And as you said, that was the period where you were transitioning from a manual gearbox as well. So they used to have to like fight a manual gearbox through some corner that would send you into death if you didn't have the right gear.
I mean, I give this example because people say, for example, especially newer fans will say, well, if you put Fangio or Pepe Gonzalez, who is known for being obese, into a modern F1 car, they wouldn't even be able to drive it, or they wouldn't be anywhere near a modern driver. But then they don't like it when I come back to them and say, well, if Verstappen or Hamilton raced in the 50s and they properly tried to drive the cars, they would end up in a tree by 5 laps and they'd probably die.
It would be a mixture of it would somehow be a mixture of not having the guts to drive it how it should, but also
Yeah.
probably being a bit too aggressive with it and driving it beyond its limits because they're used to cars that have so much more grip.
Yeah.
Definitely.